Banu Kilab was an Arab tribe that dominated Central Arabia during the late pre-Islamic era. It was a major branch of the Banu Amir ibn Sa'sa tribe and thus of North Arabian Qaysi lineage. During and after the Muslim conquest of Syria, tribesmen from the Banu Kilab migrated to northern Syria. Under the chieftain Zufar ibn al-Harith al-Kilabi, they led the Qays in revolt against the Umayyad Caliphate until they reached a peace in 691. A second and third wave of Kilabi tribesmen entered northern Syria in the 9th and 10th centuries, the last wave being associated with the rebellious Qarmatian movement. With this extra strength and a Bedouin mobility, the Banu Kilab emerged as the predominant force in the desert steppe north of Palmyra and around Aleppo at the expense of well-established, semi-sedentary tribes. They were involved in the rise of the Hamdanid dynasty in that city in the late 10th century, but often rebelled and participated in intra-dynastic disputes. In the early 11th century, the Kilabi chief Saleh ibn Mirdas assumed leadership of the tribe and by 1025 established an emirate based in Aleppo that included much of western, upper Mesopotamia and northern Syria. His Mirdasid dynasty ruled Aleppo more or less continuously until 1080. Origins. The Banu Kilab were a major branch of the Banu Amir ibn Sa'sa, a large Bedouin tribal confederation, which was first mentioned in the mid-6th century. The Banu Kilab's progenitor was a certain Kilab ibn Rabra ibn Amir. The major sub-tribes of the Banu Kilab itself were Muawiyah al-Dibab, Abdallah, Abu Bakr, Amra and Jafar, all named after sons of Kilab ibn Rabra. For a significant period in the pre-Islamic era, the preeminent chieftains of the Banu Kilab came from the house of Jafar, but the largest and strongest division of the Banu Kilab was the Abu Bakr. The Amra were the second largest and the other divisions were somewhat smaller. Each division was composed of several sub-tribes. Of the Abu Bakr, the largest sub-tribes were the Arab, Rabra and Awf, all descendants of Abu Bakr's grandson Ka'b ibn Abdallah. Arabia. Pre-Islamic era. The Banu Amir's original homeland was the area between the Taruba and Rania oases and the area north of these. The Kilab migrated from this region northward and northwestward into the greater vicinity of Daraa and eventually, its sub-tribes occupied the stretch of territory between Daraa and Taruba. The internal unity of the Kilab in the pre-Islamic era was known to be particularly strong. Kilab territory was bordered to the east by the Taman and Ribab tribes, to the northeast by Banu Asad, to the north and northwest by the Ghatafan, to the southwest by Sulayman Hassan, and to the south by the Qadam and various Yemeni tribes, other than the Sulayman Hassan, with whom the Kilab had cordial relations. The Kilab was in a constant state of hostilities with the rest of the neighboring tribes. Muhammad's era, they were involved in many military conflicts with him. The first was heard the news of this massacre during the expedition of Burma owner reached Muhammad. He was greatly grieved and sent Amr bin Umayyah al-Damri and an answer to investigate the whole matter. On his way back to Karkara, Amr bin Umayyah rested in the shade of a tree, and the two men of Banu Kilab joined him. When they slept, Amr killed them both, thinking that by doing that he would avenge some of his killed companions. The Kilab were also the target of the expedition of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq in December 628. Muhammad ordered this expedition to attack the Banu Kilab tribe. Many people were killed by Muslims. Muhammad also ordered an attack against them during the expedition of al-Kilabi in June 630. With the purpose of calling the Banu Kilab tribe to embrace Islam. Fighting broke out and the Muslim killed one person. Muhammad also ordered the expedition of Khalid ibn al-Walid in April 631 to demolish an idol called Wad, worshipped by the Banu Kilab tribe. Syria. Early migrations and leadership of Qays clans from the Kilabi divisions of Abu Bakr, Amr, Abdallah, Muawiyah and possibly Ja'far, migrated to Syria during and soon after the Muslim conquest of that region in the 630s. This represented the first major wave of Kilabi migration to Syria, while the Abu Bakr division was the largest Kilabi unit in Arabia. The Amr were apparently the largest and strongest unit in Syria at least until the 9th century. The Kilab first established themselves in the area west of the northern Euphrates Valley and Qanasrin. Many of the Kilab newcomers were brought in as troops by the governor of Syria, Muawiyah, during Caliph Uthman's reign. Muawiyah later established the Umayyad Caliphate and appointed a leading chieftain of the Kilab, Zufar ibn al-Harith, as governor of Qanasrin. Zufar hailed from the Amr division, which according to historian Suhail Zakir, was always distinguished by its militant and warlike attitude. When the Umayyad Caliph Yazid I and his successor Muawiyah II died in quick succession in 683 to 684, Syria was in disarray. Amid these circumstances, Zufar revolted and gave his allegiance to the rebel leader Abdullah ibn Zubair. He then dispatched Arab troops from Qanasrin to assist the Qaysi general al-Darq ibn Qays al-Fihri against an Umayyad Kalb force at the Battle of Migrated near Damascus in 684, during which al-Darq was killed and the Qays routed. Consequently, Zufar fled to the Euphrates town of al-Qaysi, expelled the Umayyad governor, fortified the town and established it as a center of Qaysi resistance to the Umayyad state. In 691, Caliph Abd al-Malik made a peace agreement with Zufar whereby the latter defected from Ibn Zubair in exchange for a prominent position in the Umayyad court and military. Zufar's sons Hudayl and Kawthar, who were particularly active during the reigns of Caliph Sulayman and Umar II, were regarded as preeminent chiefs of the Qays and were highly respected by the caliphs. Dominance of northern Syria. The Abbasids succeeded the Umayyads in 750. A century later, during the reign of Caliph al-Mutawakkil, law and order throughout Syria began to break down, and this process accelerated in the years following his death. The political vacuum and frequent revolts paved the way for the Kilab to strengthen their influence in northern Syria. Sometime during the 9th century, a second major wave of Kilab tribesmen, likely from the Amr branch, migrated to the area from Arabia. By the time Ahmad ibn Tulun, the nominal Abbasid governor of Egypt, conquered Syria in 878, the Kilab established themselves as a force to be reckoned with, according to historian Kamal Salabi. In 882, the Kilab provided critical assistance to Ibn Tulun in his suppression of two uprisings, the first led by an Abbasid prince and the second by the rebel Tulunid governor of northern Syria. Both rebellions were apparently backed by elder established Arab tribes and peasant clans whose lands were being encroached upon by the Kilab. The Kilab firmly established themselves as the predominant tribe in the region north of the Palmyrene steppe and west of the Euphrates in the early to mid-10th century. At that time, a third major wave of Kilabi migration, principally from the Abu Bakr division, invaded northern Syria. The medieval Aleppian chronicler Ibn al-Adam puts the date of the Kilabi invasion at 932 and states the tribesmen largely came from the Abu Bakr clans of Sabar and Dhuayba. As a result, the Abu Bakr came to outnumber the Amr division. Zaka writes that the entry of new Kilabi tribesmen no doubt had some considerable effect on the life and organization of the whole body of Kilab in Syria, but it is very difficult, if not impossible, to find any reliable information concerning this question. The 10th century Kilabi invasion may have been encouraged or directly supported by the Qarmatian movement based in eastern Arabia. The Qarmatians, whose troops largely consisted of Bedouin tribes, launched a series of invasions against Syria in the 10th century, the first occurring in 902. The Kilab and other branches of the Banu Amir provided the bulk of Qarmatians' military personnel. At the time, the Arab tribes of Syria and Mesopotamia experienced marked population growth which coincided with rising grain prices. This, according to historian Arabian, made the tribes susceptible to Qarmatian propaganda denouncing the wealth of the urban Sunni population and the luxury of the pilgrimage caravans. The tribes frequently raided the agricultural lands of Hama, Marat al-Numan and Salamiya, but nonetheless integrated well with the local population due to the shared Shia Muslim faith. The Qarmatians too were Shia, following a version of Ismailism. In 937, the Kilabi newcomers captured Marat al-Numan, plundered the surrounding countryside and took captive its governor and local garrison after the latter put up resistance. The dominance of the Kilabi Bedouins prevented Muhammad ibn Tufayl al-Ikhshid, the ruler of Egypt and southern Syria, from effectively governing northern Syria, which he conquered in the late 930s. He formed an alliance with part of the Kilab, appointing Ahmad ibn Sa'id al-Kilabi, from the Amra branch, as governor of Aleppo in 939. In the months after, the Ikhshidids were driven out of northern Syria by the Abbasids. Between 941 and 944, the political situation in northern Syria was fluid, and at one point al-Ikhshid reoccupied northern Syria. Al-Ikhshid appointed Ahmad ibn Sa'id governor of Antioch and his brother Uthman governor of Aleppo. Involvement with Hamdanids. The appointments of Ahmad and Uthman aroused the jealousy of other Kilabi chieftains who, seeking to replace the kinsmen, invited Nizar al-Dawla, the Hamdanid ruler of Mosul, to invade Aleppo with their assistance. Nizar al-Dawla's brother, Saif al-Dawla, entered Aleppo in October 944 and was greeted by Uthman, who took Saif on a tour of each of the villages in Aleppo's domain. Ibn al-Adam asserts it was the internal divisions among the Kilab that enabled Saif to successfully establish himself in Aleppo. Saif later enlisted Kilabi tribesmen in his failed attempt to conquer Ikhshidid-controlled southern Syria in 946. However, due to incessant Bedouin raids against his subjects, Saif evicted most of the tribes from northern Syria and into Upper Mesopotamia. An apparent exception to these expulsions was the Kilab, who were the only tribe authorized to inhabit northern Syria. Nonetheless, they were in conflict with Saif at some point, but by the time he died in 967, he granted the Kilab amen. Throughout the 10th and 11th centuries, the Kilab served those who paid most and often, at a time of crisis, would sell their employer to the highest bidder, according to Zaka, and so it was with the Hamdanids and their opponents. Kilabi tribes were involved in every Hamdanid struggle with the Byzantine Empire, every uprising against them, and in intradynastic conflicts over the Emirate of Aleppo. According to Bianquist, in the event of victory, the Kilab expected their employer to grant them Qutiyat. Saif's successor Sa'id al-Dawla had 500 Bedouin warriors from the Amra in his army in 983, indicating the large size of the Kilabi division. Meanwhile, Bakjur, Sa'id al-Dawla's rebellious Ghulam, had his own contingent of Kilabi warriors when he fought Sa'id al-Dawla in 991. Bibliography